right. So obviously, amino acids are the precursors of proteins, and proteins in turn are really some of the most abundant and diverse macromolecules in nature. So they play so many different roles. For example, they have important functional roles, proteins, as enzymes, hormones, cell surface receptors. We're going to cover a lot of those, cover a lot of these, cover a lot of those. So I want you to kind of really, the simple stuff is important stuff. Realize that most of these important players in the cell are protein in nature: enzyme, hormone, cell surface receptor. There are structural components in the cell that are basically protein in nature. That's a lot of the cell membrane components, organelles, bones, skin, muscle, connective tissue are all made up of important structural protein components. There are protein components that are part of that have like some specialized functions, like the immunoglobulins of the immune system. They are protein in nature. When we respond to some kind of challenge from a virus or a bacterium, or our immunoglobulins are go to action, and they are of a protein nature. There are some proteins that have specialized function. We'll cover some of those, like hemoglobin, whose function is to transport oxygen. There are other proteins like albumin in the serum, whose function is to transport a variety of molecules. So appreciate the role of proteins in normal cellular function and tissue function. Okay, so enough about the general importance of proteins. Back to the building block, amino acids. Amino acids really are, as the name indicates, possess two functional groups. So the two functional groups are an amino group, right there, and a carboxylic acid, or a carboxylic group, both covalently attached to an alpha carbon, amino acid. That's really by definition what an amino acid. That two functional groups attached to the same carbon. That carbon can make two other bonds. So it has an hydrogen on one side, and it has an R group on the other side. So by definition, all amino acids are going to have first these two functional groups, an amino group and a carboxylic group. There's actually a single exception in that there's one amino acid that will have an imino starting with an I instead of an amino group. And we'll talk about that later today. So this alpha carbon is attached to four different molecules. Let me stick with these functional groups. The first thing you want to think about these functional groups is that they are proton donors / acceptors. Okay? So this carboxylic group can release an H plus and becomes COO minus, and the H plus is released in the medium, in the environment. So they have dissociable protons. They can give off and or accept a proton, an H plus. That's true for the carboxylic group, and that typically happens for the carboxylic group around an acidic pH. Similarly, this amino group contains a proton that can be dissociated, taking this NH3 plus to NH2, and the proton is released to the environment. So they both contain ionizable protons, meaning protons that can be given off and or accepted depending on the ambient pH conditions. So bear that in mind, keep that in mind, and that's is going to be very important property of all amino acids. The last thing I want to say on this slide is that what gives each amino acid its uniqueness is this R group, also referred to as the side chain. So the properties of the R group, if this is a polar group, then the amino acids become polar. If this is an basic R group, then the amino acid becomes a basic amino acid, and so on. So the type of R group that is present in an amino acid really indicates its identity, or gives that amino acid its identity. Okay? R group is the same as side chain, synonymous with side chain.